Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video. I am so excited today to do my February wrap up because February was a really great reading month for me. I did start the year in a bit of a slump and I just wasn't reading books that I was loving extremely, and February changed that. Thank goodness. I found some new favorites. I got my reading mojo back, so yeah, I'm just so excited to talk about these books. I will have a list of all the books I'm going to talk about in the description box like I always do with my wrap-ups, and you'll see timestamps, so if you don't want to hear my thoughts on every single one of the books in this video, you can kind of skip and like pick and choose which ones you're interested in. I will also have the vlogs linked down below that the books were featured in, so if there's any book in here that you want to hear more thoughts on, I have likely read it in a vlog because most of the books that I'm going to talk about today were in vlogs, so you can do that. Let's start off with my new obsession, which is of course Rob and Hobb. I have been on a mission this year to kind of make my way through Rob and Hobb's books, and I'm just loving them, so I'm getting through them so quickly and easily. I love them that much. Now, I actually did start Assassin's Quest last year in November. This is the final book in the first trilogy in this Realm of the Elderling series. I started it in November. I read half of it then, and then I put it down because I had to focus on my TBR completion project series, and I finished it in February. But before I finished this, I actually picked up Ship of Magic and read that. This is the first book in the second trilogy, but we follow a different set of characters, so I thought it would be okay to start. And a lot of people also recommend when like starting the Realm of the Elderling series, you can either start with Ship of Magic or you could start with the first book in this trilogy, which is Assassin's Apprentice. I personally recommend reading them in publication order. You can start here if you really want to, and if you're more interested in this book and this world, because I do see how this book will have more appeal. The main reason I say personally that I think you should read it in reading order, you will miss like the Easter eggs in this trilogy that connects this book to this part of the world and also this story. But I think also too, the magic that is in this book that is, you know, introduced in this book from book one is actually the magic that ends up being revealed in this final book. So I didn't know that, and like I said, I read like half of this book, and then like the second half was like even more of the magic being revealed, so I kind of was already familiar with it. But it just depends what kind of reader you are and if that doesn't really bother you. I think also reading in publication order is better just because you can really see Rob and Hobb's growth as a writer. But yeah, overall it's up to you, and I love these both so much. So Ship of Magic I picked up because it was in my 5-star prediction reading vlog, which was a reading vlog I did in February where I reacted to my 5-star prediction video that I did back in 2019, and this was the only book in that video that I still had not read. I swear I've owned this book for like literally 6 years or something ridiculous, and it's taken me this long to get to it. It's like always been on my 5-star prediction list, and yeah, it was 5 stars and I finally got to it. And then I also in that video included new 5-star predictions that I also read in that video, which are in this video so you'll hear my thoughts on them here. I think what I really loved about this in comparison to her original trilogy is the female characters. There's a lot more female characters in this world, but I also think that there's a good like balance between female characters that you sort of stereotypically see in fantasy worlds like this and fantasy settings like this, and then there's those that are like kind of breaking those stereotypes at the same time. But then even the ones that are stereotyped, Rob and Hobb does such a fantastic job of exploring those characters that they end up not feeling like stereotypes because of how much depth she gives them. This book isn't a super heavy book in terms of plot or in action. We follow this family, a trader family, the Vesteret family. Basically this book is about them at the start of this book having recently fallen on difficult financial times and they're struggling. They have this ship, it's their family ship, which is called Vivacia, and she is a life ship. In this world, life ships are ships where the figurehead comes to life, so there were quite a few life ships in here that you get to know, and I absolutely loved all of them. They were my favorite characters in the book. What happens is, to own a life ship, they have to pay back a certain amount of money every year to the ship makers, I guess you would say, who you do learn more about, and they're very interesting. It's basically just about this family struggling financially, and everyone in the family sort of has their own ideas about how they should restore the family financially, and that causes a lot of conflict. And there's also a lot to do about the ship and who should inherit the ship. If you are into like books that have a lot of conflict to do with like politics and things, and they're very character driven, this is like the book for you. It's so well done. I was just engrossed from page one. This did not take me long to read at all. I love the world, I love the characters, I love the conflict that it explored and how that sort of showed who these characters really were and their limitations, and also how shitty some of them were. There were also pirates in this book. One of the characters we follow in this series is a pirate, so we get to follow a villain, which was so fun. I definitely think some people might complain that Robin Hobb is too descriptive and sort of there might be like a lot of unnecessary like word count or pages or whatever. I don't think that. I just love being in the setting and the world and in the moments that she creates so much that I actually really love how drawn out it is. Yeah, so 5 stars it is. I loved it so much. And then when I finished this, I was like, oh my god, I need to finish Assassin's Quest. So I did that, and I'm so glad I did. I loved this as well. This one got a 4.5. I've talked about this trilogy quite a bit, but in the first book we meet Fitz as a child, and he is a bastard to the prince in waiting. The royal family take him in, and in order to prevent him from ever having any legitimate claim to the throne, they train him to be an assassin. So we watch Fitz grow up in the shadows of the courts as an assassin, and no one knows. And I just love this book so much because Fitz from book 1 had so many secrets, and in here they like all come to light, and you just see the crazy aftermath of what that causes. It's heartbreaking. Really, it really kind of was. I love Fitz so much. Fitz is like definitely one of my all-time favorite characters. He's such a himbo. Like, he's so dumb. Like, he's just such an idiot sometimes. Like, he's smart too, but when it's like the obvious things, he's stupid. Again, this one is very political heavy instead of like the traitors that Ship of Magic deals with. This one is dealing with a lot of court politics, which I just love. I love politics, and I think it creates so much tension in the story and just so many interesting dynamics that we get to see play out with the characters and all these different alliances, and I think it creates like really heavy stakes. In book 1 we are introduced to the magic of the world, and a lot of the magic is to do with like power of the mind and like communicating through the mind with like humans and animals. There's sort of 2 different sets of magic, and in here we really get to kind of fully understand the meaning of it. Sort of. There's definitely more to explore, but you get some really interesting and cool reveals. That's all I will say in this book because it is the final book in a trilogy, but if you haven't given Robin Hobb a go, please do. I love her. I want more people to read her so I can gush about her to more people and we can all like, yeah. Let's talk about now a disappointing conclusion to a series, which is A Vow So Bold and Deadly. This is the final book in Eco So Dark and Lonely trilogy, which I loved the first book. I think the first book was the best book, and part of my problem with the sequels is I think it shouldn't have been a trilogy. I think it just should have been a standalone. The first book is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and that sort of whole story of Beauty and the Beast is sort of concluded at the end of the first book. But what book 1 did, and what I did really like about what book 1 did, was we weren't just looking at the people in the castle who were affected by the curse that the beast has, you know, has on him, yeah. We actually get to also see the townspeople and the people in the kingdom, and how having a ruler locked up in the castle who is so disconnected from his people and how that has affected them. What book 2 and book 3 did was it did try to focus and explore more of the kingdom and more of the people and more of their struggles. But I don't think it did it in a good way, because it was like trying to do that, but then again we were just still having like the same conflict between the main characters, and that felt very repetitive in itself. My least favorite thing in this was the conflict. I think there was no stakes. A lot of the conflict occurred because of like miscommunication. Brigid Kemmerer is primarily a contemporary author, I believe. I know she does have like a YA paranormal romance series, but most of her books are kind of set in the real world with contemporary themes and is a contemporary story, and I think that was kind of very evident here because there was quite a few things in like world building wise and like fantasy conflict wise that I think really missed the mark. I was kind of, by the end of this book as well, unfortunately just really like over the characters. I think they ended up quite different to how they were in the beginning, and not in a character development way that particularly made sense to me. I was disappointed by this one, I'm not gonna lie. I gave it 2.5 stars in the end. Let's talk about Empire Sand, which was another one of my favorite books of February. This one was such a surprise. Like, I thought I was gonna like this one. I did not expect to love this one, and for this book to be my first 5-star read of the year, which is actually kind of amazing as well, because I didn't have a single book, I think, over 4 stars in December as well. I think it had been like 3 months since I had a 5-star, and then I had this, so we love to see it. This book I read for my fantasy romance reading vlog. I didn't even realize it was like fantasy romance until I was told, and as soon as I found that out I had to include it in that vlog because I already owned it, and it's a book I wanted to get to for quite a while. This book we follow a girl who is married off at the beginning of this book. So we have that like arranged marriage trope, and they're both kind of in this situation where they are being used. She's also of the Amruthi people, who in this world, those are ones who are seen and referred to as barbarians, and they are really frowned upon, mostly because they have like magic in their blood and are sort of seen to be like cursed and the bearers of like bad omens sort of thing. The Empire has made great efforts to wipe out these people, and our main character in this is half Amruthi, and so she's married off and she sort of finds herself in this situation with her new husband. Oh my god, this is so good. I really enjoyed the main character. I really enjoyed the romance. The love interest is actually like this soft boy and I just loved it, like this tortured soft boy, and their whole dynamic was so wholesome, so cute. I think this is exactly what I want for my fantasy romance, because we spent like a good 100 pages of this book getting to know our female character and kind of her setup of her personality wise. We got to know her family, her culture, her sort of status in this world, but also how she is treated because of who she is. And then we had the two characters meet after page 100, and then we have them together getting to know each other, and we took time to get to know them. Like, it's a pretty slow burn romance, and I loved it. I thought it was perfection the way it was done. And then eventually they got together. Quite a bit of politics again. You see, I love my politics, and this was well done. It was so good. I loved it. I cannot wait for the Jasmine Throne, which will be Tasha Suri's latest book that comes out in June. It's now like my most anticipated release of the year. If you have any recommendations for books like similar to this, just in terms of how the romance is done, I want to try and get more into fantasy romance, but I'm quite picky and I want slow burn romance, and this is like so perfection. Let me know if you have any recs, because I really would love to read more. Also, in that fantasy romance reading vlog I did also read From Blood and Ash. This book, I swear, like everyone on BookTube pretty much has read it by now, and I enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun reading this, and I actually want to credit this book for getting me out of my slump. Like, I just wanted to pick up a book that was like a fun time that I didn't really need to take seriously, and this book was exactly that. We follow this maiden called Poppy, and she is basically kept all covered up, kept kind of away from a lot of society, is going to eventually be like a sacrifice to the gods of sorts, and it's her romance with her new guard Hawk. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of Hawk. Like, the more of the book I read, I didn't love him, and I did listen to the audiobook, and oh my god, the accent that attempted to be British for Hawk was absolutely atrocious. It was so bad. It was like a very poor attempt. It was exactly what I expected, which is what I wanted, and I did really love the fantasy world that was created in this. I thought it was a really interesting like setup. I liked how it had like cult vibes. It also has like vampire vibes. It was really interesting, and I had a lot of fun, and I gave it 3 stars. The last book I read in that fantasy romance reading vlog was Radiance. This was one of the first books that came to mind when I decided I wanted to do that vlog, because I've heard so many great things about this book. It is a very wholesome romance fantasy book. It is an arranged marriage story as well. We follow 2 characters who are married off for political means to kind of unite their races. I really liked it. I liked how they became friends first, and then they grew into something more, but there wasn't much outside of their romance, and I think for me to really love a fantasy romance in particular, I want more going on than just the romance. Like, I really appreciated this book because it was just a very wholesome, cute book, and often I feel like, maybe not often, but at least with the books I have previous experience in reading, are more like From Blood and Ash, where you have this kind of cocky, arrogant love interest who kind of resembles the Sarah J Maas character. I really appreciated that. This book, their characters were different. I just kind of like how they were kind of nice people. But ultimately, I gave this book 3 stars as well, because although I enjoyed reading it and it was like cute and wholesome and all that, I didn't find it to be particularly memorable, or there would be particularly much else to it than that. I also completed a graphic novel, which is Monstress Volume 1. This was in my 5-star prediction vlog, and it was a 4-star read. I really enjoyed this. I definitely struggle with graphic novels to pick them up. They are definitely what I put off. So I'm so glad I finally got around to this. I need to try and get around to Volume 2 relatively soon. This book is set in a world where there are kind of descendants of gods, almost like demigods, I guess. If you can see the little character in the back. They look like that. They're like part animal, part human. Oh yeah, so they're called Arcanics, and there's been like a really long war between the humans and them. We are following mostly this woman and the Arcanics, and their oppression in this world that humans rule, and how the humans treat them so awfully, and how the humans use them, like they will literally use their body parts for their own gains and their own technology. And I loved the art. The art is absolutely stunning. But overall in this particular book, there was a lot of setup of the world, and I guess also the story, but we didn't actually get to see a lot of the story play out, which is why I really need to read volume 2 to see how it all goes. But yeah, I definitely really like this. I know this is like a very popular graphic novel, and I can definitely see why, and I'm excited to continue. I also completed The Winter of the Witch, and this is the final book in Katherine Arden's Winter Night trilogy. I did not like this. This was a 2-star read for me, and ultimately I found this entire trilogy to be quite disappointing. I said when I reviewed the previous 2 books in this trilogy in my previous wrap-ups that I found this trilogy to be much more historical focused than it is fantasy focused, and that still stands, which I wasn't a fan of, but I also felt like there was some really cool opportunities to like have magic and explore magic, and that wasn't really done. I thought that the conclusion of this book, the final battle, was very out of place with the rest of the series, and that the series didn't really seem at all that it was leading to that direction. So it just didn't feel relevant, was out of place. I found the villains in the second book really disappointing, and in here even more so. The villains in here, they were very well crafted. They were very threatening and scary, particularly the one in here, because I think it was a very real villain. He's a man who is very conservative and has really conservative ideas, particularly about women and women's roles and how women should and shouldn't be. And that is sort of something he's trying to inflict and oppress on our female main character, who is a woman that rejects those ideas of what a woman should be in this historical period. It was scary because he was someone who also had a lot of power and a lot of influence. He was so threatening, like he was so threatening because of that, but also because of how real he was. Like he's a villain that is based on a lot of, unfortunately, real people who have existed and who still exist. His whole ending, like, no thank you, like I just was so not satisfied. There was so much build up and so much craft into his character and his character's impact, but we didn't get to see any of that, which was really disappointing. So overall, I think this series is like very beautifully written, and I love the setting. It's, you know, a winter fairy tale story, and it's gorgeous, and I love all the little spirits in the world that we get to see in the mythology that is also shown throughout the book. But ultimately I was disappointed by this. And I don't know if I'll read more Katherine Arden or not. It kind of depends, because I did really like her writing, but I think her storytelling and the choices she made in her story was not for me, unfortunately. I'll leave the link to the live show that I did on Meg's channel with Meg and Aaron, because Aaron and I were not fans of this. Aaron liked it a little bit more than I did, but Meg absolutely loves this book. So it's really interesting to hear like the different things. I also in February listened to the audiobook of Grown, and oh my god, this book was hard to read. I thought I was going to get through this quite quickly. It's a contemporary book and it deals with grooming. We are following a young black woman who is really keen to get into the music industry, and she sort of gets this opportunity to work with an artist who is in his late 20s, and he's a very well-known and popular artist, and she gets the opportunity to mentor under him. This book was extremely difficult to read, but I think it was written in the best way, because we completely understand the main character Enchanted, how she had this dream of becoming a singer, and she is handed this opportunity by a artist that she loves and admires to be her mentor. That's basically going to take her and start her career, and we see how easy it is for her to be drawn in and to be groomed. But I think what I loved about how Tiffany G. Jackson wrote Enchanted's character was it in no way dumbed her down. I think it just showed a real and scary reality of how easily this can happen. It also showed the aftermath of this and what it was like for Enchanted to try and come forward and dealing with this mentally, and how, you know, it gave her PTSD, how people treated her when they found it out. There was victim blaming that was going on. There were so many people who didn't believe her and who think that she was just using this guy for her own means, and I thought it was just so well done. It's a very heavy book. I had to really pace myself when I was listening to it. Like I thought I was going to get through it quickly, and I couldn't, because it was so heavy. It was so difficult to read. Trigger warnings for grooming, for rape, for assault. It was a very powerful read. If you can handle reading about grooming and those sort of topics, I strongly recommend this book, because it's really important and it's just so well done and so well told. 5 stars for that one as well. It was in my 5-star reading vlog, and yeah, so I really was successful with that vlog because I got a few 5 stars out of it. Okay, the last book I want to talk about in this video is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. And this again was also in my 5-star prediction reading vlog. And unfortunately, this wasn't a 5-star read. This was a 3-star read. My main reason for this being a 3-star read, I think, is because the way this was told, it is told in journal entries of a sort, which I wasn't really a fan of. And this book as well was told over quite a few years. I have this really weird thing where I don't like books where they're told like over a really long period of time, and I don't really like them when they're told in a really short period of time. I think there's a happy medium, and I'm quite particular on it, and this one, it didn't work for me. This book is set in a dystopian world, and we sort of are seeing the changes happening, and we're seeing the world falling more and more from grace. And a huge focus of this book is sort of how the people in the societies, how they react to change. Some of them adapt to it, and some of them are just completely unable to. And our protagonist in here is someone who's very adaptable, and she's kind of been preparing for the change. She saw it coming for a while and she prepared, and we're following her telling her story. What I did like about this was it was definitely thought-provoking, and there were some really interesting themes, and there was definitely a lot that made me think about 2020 and sort of the relevance of that, and sort of how we saw people react to what happened in 2020. So there was a lot of that made me really reflective, and just think a lot about the times that we've currently experiencing and have experienced from last year. Other than that, there was not a whole lot more to the story for me. There's a lack of plot in this. I don't think it was supposed to be a very plot heavy book. I think this is meant to be a kind of more concept heavy book that explores this world, and I think it did set out and do what it intended to do well, but it was not necessarily what I wanted out of it, if that makes sense. So yeah, 3 stars. I definitely plan to give more Octavia E. Butler a go. Okay, I'm going to end this video here. I tried to be quick because everyone is just making so much racket today. And I don't want to get frustrated because it gets really obvious on camera when I get frustrated with, you know, noise and people. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it this far, leave me the dolphin emoji. Hopefully the dolphin emoji. Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying whatever you're currently reading, and I really hope to see you next time. Bye!